My mother had been planning this birthday for weeks. 70 years old. She kept saying it like she couldn't believe it herself, 70, pressing her hand to her chest every time someone brought it up, like the number was both a gift and a weight she was still learning to carry. The house smelled like vanilla buttercream and the particular kind of warmth that only comes when every person you love is standing in the same room. Streamers in her favorite color, sage green, twisted along the ceiling. Frank Sinatra played low from the corner speaker. My Aunt Carol had driven 6 hours from Cincinnati just to be there. And Lily, my 4-year-old, was electric. She'd worn her little yellow dress with the white collar, the one she called her fancy chicken dress, and she hadn't stopped spinning since we arrived. She kept touching everything, the balloons, the tablecloth, the edge of the cake like it was made of something sacred. "Mama, it has flowers on it," she whispered, eyes wide. "Don't touch, baby," I told her, smoothing her hair back. She listened. For a while. When my mother finally walked into the room and everyone began to sing, Lily grabbed my hand so tight her little knuckles went white. She was so happy. That was the last still moment before everything cracked open. We gathered around the dining table, shoulder to shoulder, the kind of closeness that only happens at family celebrations, where you forget, just for a moment, that people have edges. My mother stood at the head of the table, both hands pressed together near her lips, eyes glistening. The cake was 3 tiers. Roses piped in pale pink. 70 candles, well, one of those novelty number candles, a 7 and a 0, flickering in the dim light we'd created just for this moment. Everyone was singing. Lily was singing too, her version, slightly off-key, slightly behind, completely earnest. She was standing on her tiptoes beside me, chin barely clearing the table's edge, watching those flames like they were the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen in her short, luminous life. And then, the song ended. In that half-second of silence before my mother could even close her eyes and make her wish, Lily blew. One big, proud, 4-year-old breath. Both candles went out perfectly. The room went quiet in that strange way, not angry, not yet, just suspended. A few people laughed softly. My mother blinked, surprised, then smiled, because of course she did. She loved that little girl more than her own birthday. But across the table, I saw my brother Marcus go still. His jaw tightened. His glass came down too hard. Marcus had always carried anger like a second skeleton, something structural, something beneath everything he showed the world. I'd grown up watching it. The way his mood could shift a room's temperature without a single word. The way our mother had spent decades tiptoeing around his silences, calling it just how he is, the way you call a storm just weather. But he was an adult. And Lily was 4. "Marcus," I started. He was already moving. He came around the table faster than anyone processed what was happening. One moment he was across from me, the next he was beside Lily, his hand closing around her small upper arm with a grip that made my stomach drop before my brain had even caught up. "You ruined it," he said, low and tight, the words meant only for her. Lily's face crumpled instantly, not understanding, just feeling the sudden wrongness of being grabbed, of the warmth in the room evaporating. "Marcus, stop," my voice came out sharper than I intended. He didn't stop. He pulled her sideways. I don't think he meant what happened next, I've told myself that 1,000 times since, but his motion combined with her small unsteady feet and the chair behind her and the table's edge. She went down. The cake came with her. The sound she made when she hit the floor wasn't crying. It was silence. Complete, terrible silence. There are moments in a mother's life that don't feel real while they're happening. They feel like watching yourself from the ceiling, detached, clinical, moving through water. Your body acts while your mind just screams somewhere behind your eyes. I was on the floor beside her before I knew I'd moved. "Lily. Lily, baby, look at Mama." She was on her side, cake everywhere, frosting in her hair, on her cheek, on that little yellow dress. Her eyes were closed. Not the closed of sleep. The closed of absence. "Call 911. I heard my own voice like it belonged to someone else. The room erupted. Chairs scraping. My Aunt Carol knocking something off the counter. My mother making a sound I'd never heard from her before, low and broken, like something fundamental giving way inside her chest. Marcus stood completely still near the table. His face had gone the color of old paper. I pressed 2 fingers to Lily's neck the way I'd seen on television 100 times, never imagining I'd need it. Her pulse was there, steady, present, but she wouldn't open her eyes. "Stay with me, baby. Stay with Mama." The ambulance took 11 minutes. I know, because I counted every second in my head like a prayer, like if I kept counting she would stay tethered to me, to this world, to that yellow dress and her fancy chicken name for it. 11 minutes is a very long time. Part 5 of 8. The emergency room smelled like antiseptic and recycled air and the particular anxiety of strangers sitting too close together in plastic chairs. I hadn't let go of Lily's hand the entire ride over. The paramedic had to gently redirect me twice just to do her job. I kept apologizing and then forgetting I'd apologized and doing it again, hovering, reaching, needing to feel that small warm hand in mine as proof. They took her behind a set of double doors that swung shut in my face. A nurse with kind eyes and a tired voice told me someone would update me soon. Soon. I sat in a chair that was bolted to 3 other chairs and I stared at the floor's linoleum pattern, gray flecked with white, and I thought about the morning. How Lily had eaten half a waffle and declared the other half for the birds. How she'd asked me 3 times if Grandma would like her drawing of a rainbow cat. How she'd held my hand in the car and hummed something that wasn't quite a real song. My mother arrived 20 minutes later with my Aunt Carol. She sat beside me and took both my hands in hers without saying a single word. Her birthday sash was still around her shoulders. She hadn't taken it off. Marcus didn't come. An hour passed. Then the doctor appeared in the doorway, young, measured, carrying something careful in his expression. He asked if I was Lily's mother. I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. His name was Dr. Ellison. He had steady hands and the kind of eyes that had delivered difficult news enough times to know exactly how to hold a person's gaze while doing it. He led me to a small consultation room off the main corridor. My mother followed without asking permission. Nobody stopped her. We sat down. He sat across from us. "Lily has a concussion," he began. "Moderate." She regained brief consciousness in the imaging suite, which is encouraging. I exhaled something that wasn't quite air, more like 3 hours of held terror releasing all at once. "But," he said, and that word landed like a stone in still water. He paused, not for drama, but the way doctors pause when they're choosing precision over speed. "During the scan, we found something unrelated to tonight's fall. A small abnormality near her left temporal lobe. It's subtle. Most physicians would only catch it incidentally, which is exactly what happened here." The room tilted slightly. "What kind of abnormality?" My mother's voice was steadier than mine would have been. "We believe it's a low-grade arteriovenous malformation. A tangle of blood vessels, present since birth most likely. It hasn't caused symptoms yet, but left undetected, eventually it would have." He folded his hands. "The fall tonight brought her to us. The scan found something that needed finding." He looked at me directly. "Your daughter is very lucky we're sitting in this room right now." The silence that followed was the most complicated silence of my life. Part 7 of 8. They let me see her 40 minutes later. She was in a bed that was too big for her, wearing a hospital gown printed with tiny blue stars, and 4 taped carefully to the back of her small hand. Her hair was still faintly sticky with frosting along one temple. A nurse had tried to clean it but hadn't quite gotten everything. She was awake. Barely, eyes at half-mast, heavy with medication and exhaustion, but awake. Present. "Here. Mama," she said, and that single word dismantled every wall I'd built to stay functional for the past 4 hours. I sat on the edge of her bed and pulled her carefully into my arms, mindful of the 4, mindful of everything, and I just held her. She smelled like hospital soap and underneath that, still, faintly, of vanilla buttercream. "I didn't mean to blow too soon," she whispered into my shoulder. I laughed and cried at the same time in that ugly, uncontrollable way that has no dignity and needs none. I know, baby. I know you didn't. My mother appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. She stood there watching us, her daughter holding her granddaughter, and something moved across her face that I'd never seen on her before. Not grief exactly. Not relief exactly. Something older than both. Something that understood, without words, that the worst and the most important thing had just happened simultaneously. She crossed the room slowly and put her hand on my back. 3 generations. 1 small blue-starred bed. Outside, the corridor hummed quietly on. Lily had surgery 6 weeks later. It was a Tuesday morning, pale and ordinary, the kind of day that has no idea what it's holding. I packed her small bag the night before, her stuffed elephant Gerald, her favorite socks with the strawberries, the rainbow cat drawing she'd made for my mother's birthday that somehow never got delivered. She carried it into the hospital herself, very seriously, like she was going somewhere important. She was. The surgical team was extraordinary. The procedure, they told me, went better than projected. The malformation was removed cleanly. No complications. Recovery would take time, weeks of quiet, of careful watching, of relearning what normal felt like, but the prognosis was exceptional. She would be fine. More than fine. Marcus called me the night before the surgery. He didn't offer excuses. He just said, quietly, in a voice I hadn't heard from him since we were children, "I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry." I didn't tell him he was forgiven. I didn't tell him he wasn't. I just said, "She's going to be okay." Because that was the only truth that mattered. Here is what I've carried since that birthday, the unbearable, extraordinary, impossible thing. The moment that could have broken everything, broke open something instead. A 4-year-old girl who blew out candles too soon led every doctor, every scan, every careful hand, directly to the thing hiding quietly inside her that would have, one ordinary day, simply taken her. She saved her own life. She just didn't know it yet.